You're listening to the Platform Launchers podcast. I'm John Stange. It's great to have you with us this week as we talk about building, growing, and monetizing your online platform. We're talking about how you can take your passion, turn it into a platform, and let that result in your ongoing paycheck. And every now and then, we have the opportunity to bring a guest expert onto one of our calls with us. And this week, we have Lucas Marino with us. And I'm going to hold up his book here because I want you to see the cover. Lucas recently wrote the book, Monetize Your Book with a Course. You could find this on Amazon. And we hope that you'll check it out. And Lucas is a master course creator. He does this all the time. And he's going to be sharing some wisdom with us on how we can repurpose content. And so, Lucas, welcome to the Platform Launchers podcast. We're so grateful to have you on here. How's everything going?
It's going well, and I really appreciate the invite and the opportunity to spend time with everybody. And it's great to be a platform launcher amongst platform launchers.
That's right. Absolutely. He's a member of the community. He's a member of our members club. He's walking the talk. But you know what, Lucas, I think we have to start off by clearing the air on one thing. There's one thing we have to clear the air on. And I saw a certain mug. So if you're listening on the podcast, you can't see what I'm about to acknowledge. But if you're watching us via YouTube, you certainly can. Lucas happens to be a fan of the New York Football Giants.
That's right.
And yours truly happens to be a lifelong fan of the Philadelphia Eagles. And so that puts us in like slight conflict, doesn't it, Lucas? Like, can we get along? Can we even accomplish this interview? How can we even be in the same community? We're like, isn't this divisive?
Yeah, I would have thought if you had told me 2 years ago I'd be sitting next to a guy in Nashville that was a huge Philadelphia Eagles fan and that we'd get along, I'd be like, "You're crazy. There's no
It's not
way."
possible.
Yeah, but I'm proud of what you guys did in your draft. I'm just going to be really upset about it in September.
So from a distance, it looks good for but once it gets up close, it's not going to be so good. But I'm certain that people don't want to hear us talk about football unless they do. If you want to hear us talk about football, by all means, message me because we'll have a night where I could just talk about that for a long period of time. However, Lucas and I have very much a commonality when it comes to entrepreneurship and content creation and figuring out ways that we could be efficient with the kind of content that we're creating. And so, Lucas, you recently released the book, Monetize Your Book with a Course. If you could start off, even before we get into some of the details of the book, give us a little bit of your background, how you got into this space, and then I want to talk about just some of the ideas that you convey in this book because it's a very helpful concept.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so I was active duty Coast Guard for 21 years. I was a naval engineer and I spent most of my time at counter narcotics units. So I was overseas most of the time, having fun playing a young man's game. And as I got a little older and I progressed and my body started to remind me of how time does what it does, I decided to retire. So when I retired from the service, I had spent half of my time within engineering and operational units, and so the other part of your time you spend administratively, right? So my administrative tours were mostly training commands. So I started out as an instructor and then became a program manager for training for all naval engineering in the Coast Guard. And then my last job was as the dean of the engineering and weapons school for the service in Yorktown, which was kind of fun because I went from, you want to talk about like a career transition, I went from being in command of 155 staff and 6,000 students a year to here's your retirement check, right? Like, go home and don't talk to anybody. So it was quite the shift. And initially I said, I'm never going to work for anyone else ever again. I'm going to go out on my own. And I started a consultancy, engineering consulting firm, and ended up working with the Army and the Navy as a senior advisor, contractor type, while I built my empire on the side. So for those that are working full-time jobs and building your next entrepreneurial endeavor on the side, I'm with you. That's what I did for several years. And then one day it all just got bigger and I decided I couldn't do both anymore. And that's when I transitioned full-time into ownership of my own business. And now I'm at like 2.5 businesses. and this is what I do every day for a living, and it's both terrifying and exhilarating. So
So you obviously must like things like coaching and teaching and things like that
yes.
because you've done it for years now. Is that something, picture 18-year-old Lucas. Is that something that you envisioned yourself as an adult doing? Did you start to notice those gifts and talents at that season of life, or did it take a little longer to develop that?
Yeah, I suppose I did. I'm an ambivert, so I'm like kind of a weird mix of like I love coaching and I love the intimate relationship of working with someone. But at the same time, I was like my dream job would be to be like a writer or
Hmm.
a musician or to be doing something like that. So I was a musician for 2 years before I joined the service, and I thought at that point I was just gonna do whatever, go where the winds take me. I guess I should say where the waves take me, because I ended up in the service. But it was interesting because in the service they require you to continuously move up or get out, and with moving up comes leadership and responsibility. So if you find that you enjoy coaching, mentorship, teaching, then you tend to excel in those leadership positions. And I found that to be the most enjoyable part of my job. So yes, I did kind of always feel that pull. I think at 18, I was probably too immature to understand what that was. And by the time I left, it was the thing I most feared losing. I most feared losing those types of relationships. And I thought, man, if I can't coach or mentor or interact with people, I'm going to lose it. And then I ended up being a coach and a mentor and a consultant. So fear not.
So I'm assuming that, so all right, so you figure out that this is an area that you just absolutely love, which is fantastic. And it's
Mhm.
nice that the experience that you had in the service helped refine that for you.
Right.
But now we live in this world where all of a sudden we get to do things online, and location isn't quite, I mean, we're not location dependent like we once were. I remember, how location dependent things felt when I first started my career, and now at this point with high speed internet making video and all sorts of things possible, and communication is so much easier than it once was, and so much less expensive compared to what it once was, where you could get training and coaching and consulting and all that. Um, I'm assuming somewhere along the way, it started dawning on you that you could utilize tools like the internet and conferencing and things like that to begin conveying some of your thoughts. So, how did that transition begin?
Well, I was a senior consultant for the Army. We were designing landing craft. I was one of the senior engineers on the project, like program manager types, and they were building the vessel on the other side of the country. Our design team was working in the UK, and here on the East Coast in the DC area, and so we were working in these disparate remote teams the whole time, and I felt like it was a continuation of what I had to do in the service because we were forced to go out to sea, thousands of miles away from anybody, and all you had was the internet to communicate with anyone. And we didn't even have that. Like we had email, that batched email went out once a day. So bad, right? So I always felt like, man, wouldn't it be cool if we could just talk to each other over a computer? And then
Mm.
so by the time I had transitioned out of that and into a civilian type role where those became realities, like we could use this technology and it wasn't a security issue or a logistics issue, I had fully embraced it. When I got with that Army contract, we set up fully remote teams, and most of my specialists were scattered throughout the country, and they're the only people that do what they do. So if you don't get them remotely, you're just not getting them. And so I embraced it automatically. Ironically, we were the first fully remote team in the country,
Hmm.
or in the company, sorry. And then when I transitioned to the Navy nuclear submarine program, it was even more profound. Like it was almost more unheard of that we were remote work because that community does nothing remotely. And so it was really cool to kind of be on the front of that with some of these DC like program office type jobs with the Department of Defense. But what a breath of fresh air it was when for lack of a, I mean, that's probably a bad way to lead into this, but when COVID happened, we were already remote. So our team was the one that was already stood up and running. And I just never forgot the value of being able to do this. And
Hmm.
we were able to run multi-million dollar advanced programs using nothing but remote access. So at that point, I was like, I'm never going back um, to working face to face full time. I mean, I'm all about getting together, but
Sure.
as far as full time goes, that was it. And it just so happens that what I do is deliver content to people via the internet. So to me, I'm just the happiest person alive with this. But some people, it's pretty tough.
So you have a variety of ways that you're conveying
Mhm.
content and the things that you're teaching online. It's not just one way. And that's kind of going to lead our conversation into some of the topics you talk about in your book here. But one of the things we talk about here is the benefit of having an online platform.
Mhm.
So, if you've been listening to this podcast for any length of time, you know that one of the things that we believe here is the fact that if you want traction with what you're trying to build online, you need to be doing more than one thing, or at least have some complementary legs to a stool, sometimes we call it, when you're trying to promote something. So sometimes I'll hear people say, "Oh, I've got a podcast, but it's not doing anything." And I wonder, all right, well, do you have a website? Do you have an email list? Do you have social media? Do you have YouTube? Do you have something else that's helping to create some synergy with that podcast? Do you have a podcast or do you have a platform? I think a platform is typically much stronger than just a single element like a podcast or a blog or a website. And you recently wrote a book. Now, before you got to writing this book, you had elements of a platform in place. So tell us, your what your platform is, where people could find the platform, and what elements are already in place in it.
So I suppose I technically run three separate platforms, but they're all using shared technology. In other words, I use the same learning management system for all three platforms, the same podcast hosting software for all three, the same blogging tools and everything. So I try to keep things simple by keeping my tech stack short, even though it's multiplied by X, right? By two or three. So Marino Training is my central company, and my primary, I guess you could say, my primary client, customer, learner, interactor is a nonfiction author or a coach or consultant who is interested in developing courses. And so we present our information and our content to them in several ways, one of which is a newsletter, another of which is blogs, another of which is a podcast, YouTube channel, a couple of social channels, live streams, and finally we have the products themselves, the courses, and a community. So that is kind of the nexus with which I run the business, and we are replicating that same model at like Empire Builders Masterclass, for example, where I think we're going to have a 1 year anniversary in September. So we're still babies over there.
That's great though. And I think if I counted right, I think that was 8 pieces you listed there.
Yeah, and I
Uh,
didn't even list the book,
and you
right?
didn't even list the book, so
Right,
we could say 9, right? So,
right.
I mean, each of these things, these are all contributing to your overall online, presence, your online authority, different ways that people could discover you, because there could be somebody that finds the book, and then that book leads them down the rabbit trail of all the other content, some of them that might find you on YouTube. I think YouTube and blog are probably really good discoverability tools for your platform. I would assume it usually is for most people. And each of these things gives you the opportunity to connect with others. Now, how many months has it been since you released your book, monetize your book with a course?
The book was released on February 27th.
Okay.
So I don't
So
know what
just
that.
a couple months. Yeah, we're just a couple months out from the release. And first of all, the process of writing the book, how did it go for you?
Well, I'm fortunate to have as a business partner and a dear friend an expert in self-publication, Honore Corder. So who John and I and several people in this group know well. So she was absolutely my like, follow me, young Padawan. Like, let me take you through this process. So that was more than I had anticipated it would be, but also more rewarding than I anticipated it would be. For the record, probably most of you, I had written several books before I ever published one. So
Mm,
I actually was working on two other manuscripts when I decided to publish that one. So I had three in the hopper, and that's the one that won to go all the way through the finish line with. And it was about a 7-8 month process for that one book, from concept to outline, writing, editing, proofing, design, the whole works to publication.
And
So
and it's interesting. First of all, congrats on getting it accomplished. Most
thank you.
people say that they would like to get a book out there, and you know, many people struggle to actually follow through on it. So you followed through right to the end. It's a beautiful book. It's a very helpful book. It's the kind of book I enjoy reading because it's got practical content. I don't spend. I First of all, I appreciate all kinds of literature, but my favorite is nonfiction literature that teaches me how to do something that I feel will make another element of my life better somehow. And that's the category I feel like your book falls in. And
Thank you.
yeah, and it's very good. And so one of the things that a lot of times I've heard authors express, and I'd be curious to hear your opinion about this. New authors sometimes believe that they will make a substantial portion of their income through their book,
Hmm.
and I will contend that that very rarely happens for authors. It sometimes happens, right? You might have a runaway bestseller, but when you look at what the royalty rates are for a book, it's not enough usually for it to be something that would be life-changing unless the book is like a runaway best-selling hit. You know, for some people it is drastic, but that's a
Right.
minority of people.
Right.
Most people don't have that kind of experience. Most of the time it's like a supplement to your income. But where I find, and I this is where I wanna, like, hear your thoughts on this, and I wonder if we agree. It a missing piece for many authors that they don't seem to understand is that your book in and of itself may not be something that can earn you a ton of income, but it does connect people to a whole bunch of other things you're doing. So if you have a book that you're selling for anywhere from $10 to $20, probably somewhere in that, in between those two numbers is where most books fall. You know, that's a one-time purchase that you might make a couple dollars in profit if somebody does that. But if your book leads to a more sustainable source of income, like a course or things like that that you're describing, right there you actually have the opportunity to earn some legit income. Is that something that you think about a lot? I'm assuming you do based on the topic of the book.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So that book from day one was designed to point to other products and have other products point to it. So as you probably heard, the book is the ultimate business card. It is a source of authority in certain industries. It can really set you apart from other people. It's a differentiator. I found that the minute my book was alive and out in the world, my podcast went through the roof.
Mhm.
I mean, not only was I motivated to be more consistent with my podcast publication, which is roughly a weekly release. And I say roughly because every once in a while I remember to publish it on a weekly basis. but, but it is it is notable, or it was noticeable, like immediately my numbers changed. And I was like, oh wow, look at that. And then the number of people who were contacting me on social media, interested in the content of the book, or anytime I was a guest speaker on a podcast, you could just feel that it was different, having the book. They were like, hey, he's the author of this book, everyone listen up. And you're like, wow, this is kind of nice, because it really does, convey everything you've hoped it would do for you. And I think, John, to your point about like the book, maybe the ROI financially isn't as short a term as people anticipate or hope that it would be, when you consider what you have to spend to professionally produce a book, no matter how you publish it, whether you go traditional, hybrid, or self-publishing. It is a significant investment of your energy, your money, everything, right? Time. So when you think about the ROI, if you think it's just going to be in those book royalties, you're sorely mistaken. I don't mind sharing this publicly. My first royalty check on that book from Amazon was a $79 check. And I was like high-fiving my kids in the foyer because it was more than one penny. Right.
Right.
But if I had to count on that to pay me back for the money and time I invested in that book, we'd be waiting quite a while. So, but what it did for my business, as far as bringing new people to my brand, bringing new opportunities to me through my course platform,
Mhm.
bringing potential clients to my door for service work, is unmatched. I mean, that has just been a phenomenal shift. In fact, the only other thing that matched it in impact was when the company Thinkific, the learning management system I work with, when they acknowledged me as one of their industry experts. That was the only other time I've had something boost my brand to that level as an entrepreneur.
Excellent. That's good info to know. And I bet you there are those that are listening to us right now who have a book that they've either produced recently that maybe they weren't happy with what they earned from royalties, or they have something that's in the works that they're really wrestling with. Is this going to be an income generator? How would you advise them to turn that content into, the book content into course content where they might be able to actually make substantial income? What process would you recommend that they go through? What tools would you recommend that they use? What should that look like?
Well, I think it all starts with a quality book, right? So, regardless of whether the book is doing everything you want it to do yet, it has to have the potential to do it. So, I think making sure you actually have an attractive, well produced professional book is kind of step one as far as the book is concerned. The second layer of that is something that is one of the reasons why I went to Honore Quarter to learn how to do my book was I liked the way she prioritized optimizing the book as a key component in your brand.
Hmm.
The fact that the book is related to a course, a community, and getting ready to be related to a workbook, and that all of those things are listed in the book in a professional and not sleazy, salesy way. And the fact that that book, I can basically hand it to someone. I don't even have to hand them a business card. And it has all my contact information in it, and it represents my brand appropriately. So if you can focus on building the book the right way, I think it is just a very powerful arrow pointing to the other products. And then what I did was I built what I call companion products, right? They're complementary. They're not disparate. They're not like unrelated. When you pick up that book and you go to my website, you see a community that's named after that book, and you see a course with the same name as the book. All it's basically a product line, a brand. And so I think if you take a moment to develop products for the right people, because your book may serve a different person or audience than maybe your course does. Uh, your podcast may serve a different person, even though the topic is the same and those people are all interested in the same topic. Some people are just not readers. I was using this as an example earlier. I think it was yesterday. I was talking to someone about Billie Eilish. She is a very popular musician, for those that don't know, and she got a book deal that basically flopped. And she got the deal because of her extreme notoriety and fame, but her audience doesn't read. That's just not what they're there for. So when she gets this sweet book deal and the company forks over this massive check to her and she goes, hey, if it sells one copy or 1 billion copies, it doesn't really change my life. I'm not saying she might not be proud of a well-selling book, but you get what I'm saying, that the financial repercussions fall on the company, and they thought they had knocked it out of the park signing someone that big, and it flops, right? So that's just because that's not the right audience for that product. So
Mhm.
as you build each of these products, determine that you can serve that audience well, tie the products together, and have a complementary brand that's got many feet on the foundation. I think Honore and I were calling it the three-legged stool:
Mhm.
course, book, workbook, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, stools are a great analogy for it. It's just this idea. It's not gonna stand if it doesn't have more than, if it only has one leg, it's not gonna stand. And yeah, so absolutely. And I look at this and I think you're absolutely right when it comes to, some people learn through reading, some
Mhm.
people learn through audio.
Yep.
Video right now being the most popular means by which people are consuming content. The idea of taking your ideas and putting them into a course. And that's pretty cool that Thinkific recognized you as a brand expert, someone that uses their system and their platform. So let me ask you a couple questions
Mhm.
about the logistics of course creation.
Sure.
And these are all, I recognize that these are going to be opinion questions. Okay.
Sure.
So, different people have different opinions on these things, but I want your honest opinion on
Mhm.
it. So, in your opinion, if someone says, all right, I want to create a course based on my book, how long, minute wise or hour wise, should the entire product be, in your opinion?
You mean like the length of the course?
Yeah. The,
Okay.
all the lessons together should be
Right.
how long?
So it has to be appropriate to the topic and the audience. So the audience guides every single piece of content creation for a course. And I actually, that's kind of a hard thing for a lot of subject matter experts to embrace,
Right.
because some of them fall into the trap of showing how how smart they are on that topic when they build something like a course, and you're like, no one wants your 40-hour course on underwater basket weaving or whatever it is. And there may be some people that want that, but most people don't, right? Most of your audience does not. So my golden rule with a course is to tell them what they need, nothing more, nothing less. And you go, well, how do I know what they need? Well, they have a problem that needs to be solved, and your course is going to provide a solution to them, because you're going to provide them with the knowledge or practice or both that helps them close some performance gap, obtain the knowledge to achieve some new level of proficiency at something, whatever the case may be. So whatever that goal is, whatever the outcome of that learning is supposed to be for the learner, you have to teach them what they need to know to get there. And so that's kind of what guides the length of the course, is what I call the 5 steps to building a course foundation. 1, identify the ideal learner. Who are you designing the course for? 2, what problem are you helping them solve? Is it a real problem? You can speak about it, you understand it. 3, is your solution a viable and recognizable solution to that problem? In other words, you don't have to educate them that, you know, the car can get you from point A to point B. Let me talk to you about cars, right? Like, they get that. They just need to figure out which car they want. And then the fourth leg is, now that you know what their problem is, you know how your course can provide them with a solution. What is the outcome that they expect to get out of this experience? Not like, I finished a course, but once I take your solution and implement it, what is the outcome? How does my life change by implementing what you teach me? That's the fourth layer. That's the outcome. That's actually what they're buying. They're investing in the potential to achieve an outcome they can't achieve without you. And then the last leg of it is, okay, if that's the outcome that they need, what do you need to teach them to get there? And once you know the steps that it takes to get to that outcome, the things you have to teach them, you can line those up and say, all right, I need to teach them these things, nothing more, nothing less. And then that gives you an idea about how long the course can be. Now, with that being said, that's kind of the formal way to look at the process. That's the process I use myself and I give to my clients. I would say that your audience, well, you better know your audience better than anyone else does. And you better understand what they're actually willing to do and invest in. If your audience doesn't read, you might not want to give Billie Eilish the $8 billion book contract, right? So in your situation, if your audience prefers to have several hours in one course, then make sure that your course is right-sized for that. And if you just don't think you can do them justice without going longer, well, guess what? You've got a really good case now for having the course right-sized, because you didn't put too much in it. And then you can sit back and look at it and say, well, can I break this up into 2 mini courses and sell the whole thing as one big flagship as well? Some people might want the mini course and then another mini course and get the whole package that way, or someone might just want to buy the whole deal. So yeah, it kind of does depend on the audience and the topic. And I'll give you one last kind of example of that. When I teach the Navy advanced engineering for life cycle engineering, you can't teach that in one day unless they have a very high level of proficiency. So you kind of have to know what your ideal learner is coming in the door with. At the same time, we're not going to spend more than 4 days teaching that class. I can't afford to spend 3 weeks educating people on all the fundamentals. So that would make it a mid-tier or an advanced level course. And so I can tell that to the customer before they bring me clients. Like, don't bring people that don't understand the word life cycle engineering, for example, right? Like, that's not the target audience. And so you can kind of build multiple products to kind of get people to where you need them to be, if that's what it takes.
So your book, Monetize Your Book with a Course. This book is roughly maybe about 150 pages, give or take. How long is the course that you built to go along with this book, if people are trying to measure out what they might expect?
Yeah, so if you went through it, you could do the course in a day.
Okay.
Yeah, you absolutely could do the course in a day. I would recommend that you don't do the course in a day. I tend to teach like I write. I put a whole lot of information in a pretty small, like packet like that,
Do you have a
150 pages.
preferred episode length, like, or lesson length?
Yeah, as yes, that's a very different question. So the length of a particular lesson, I always strive to be under 20 minutes.
Okay.
And if I can get it under 10, that's phenomenal.
Hmm.
And I try to use the example of when I have to teach those engineers, if I have to go through like complex math or whatever, it's going to be an hour. There's no way around it. It's what we do. And by the way, those people expect it, and that's what they're used to.
Right.
So if you did it in 20 minutes, they'd be shocked. But when it comes to teaching my course material, I break them into 20-minute or less bite-sized chunks. I think in that course, there's one video that's a little longer than that. But my Learn Thinkific course is an example of tons of bite-sized demo type videos. And there's one 45-minute video in there. And every time someone takes that class, they go, "Hey, when I first saw that 45 on the timer, I went, what?" And then they realized like, oh my gosh, this one process took 45 minutes to work through.
Yeah.
Right.
It
So,
just had to be. Yeah.
right. It just had to be. So if it just has to be, that's your only excuse for going over 20 minutes.
Do you like that? Makes sense.
Yeah,
Do you like adding supplemental materials to to your courses?
absolutely. In fact, if you're looking for the big hack that a lot of people miss, it's that they don't concentrate on the amount of value they put into a course. They're more worried about how many hours of video or numbers of lessons compared to chapters in the book. And does it match exactly with my book? You can just let go of all that stuff. And what really impresses your learner is when they get in the course and they feel like your value that you deliver them, whether it be the video and audio and visual content, plus all of the extra resources, exceeds the sticker price. That's when you'll have happy customers. Anytime that situation gets inverted, you're going to have unhappy customers. So the more resources, the better. My only caution to you about adding resources to the course is you have to know what to put in the curriculum and what to actually label as additional resources. And Colleen's nodding her head because she knows what I'm talking about. I teach at the university. And when I teach, I have to teach that lesson exactly that material. And if I want them to go look at other papers or other textbooks or other lessons, I'm going to direct them to those additional resources. And I'm going to call them out as additional resources. They're not required, they're additional. So I work with a lot of clients who have been doing something for 20, 30 years, and they can tell you everything they've learned in 20, 30 years in one course. And I'm like, you're going to carve all that out and make those additional resources so people can get to them on their time.
Nice.
Yeah.
Lucas, this is a concept that I hope more people will grasp, the idea of taking your written content, you know, the content that you've put into your book, and realizing that there's more than one way to deliver it, and that the book could really just be the starting point. You could use this as the
Yeah.
launch point to develop your authority and then build an entire brand of useful resources. I'm sure that there are those that are listening to us today that want to follow up with you. So again, I'll show you the cover here if you're on YouTube. This is the cover, Monetize Your Book with a Course, Lucas Marino. Lucas, where's the best place that people could find you if they want to follow up with additional questions or use the resources that you have?
Yeah, so my website is www.marinotraining.com. You can reach me at lucas@marinotraining.com. I'm on all the socials. I don't hide, so I'm easy to get a hold of and I'm responsive. I'm running around on LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook and all the places. So if you can spell my name, you'll find me. And in the book, I also have my email and a bunch of contact information in there as well. So if anyone has it, you don't have to worry about jotting it down. It's right in the book already. And yeah,
Perfect.
that's basically where I'm hiding.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Lucas, thank you so much. In just a moment, we're going to segue into Q&A with our members club. But those of you listening via the podcast or watching us via YouTube, thanks so much for tuning in. And again, check out the book, Monetize Your Book with a Course. Lucas Marino has been our guest, and you can find him at marinotraining.com.